If you're watching this, congrats and welcome to Fantasy Championship Week. The biggest mistake you can make at this point is to ignore the final waiver run of the season. You have two goals here. Number one, fill any hole you still have in your starting lineup. Number two, if your starting lineup is basically set, you need to block your opponent from picking up the best Week 17 ads. So in this video, I'll show you the Week 17 waiver pickups who can give you a real edge in your fantasy championship. And we're starting with Trevor Lawrence, the hottest quarterback on waivers right now. He just went back-to-back blow-up games for us in the biggest time of the entire season. Week 15, 330 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, and 51 rushing yards in a score as well. That's true league-winning upside at the position. And I've been not necessarily a Trevor Lawrence truther over the years, but the proof has been in the pudding recently. He followed it up with Week 16, 279 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and another rushing score as well. So the heater certainly didn't cool off there. Jacksonville, in general, their last 4 games have been scoring a ton of points, 34 points, 48 points, 36 points, and then 25 points. So this offense is straight up rolling right into championship week. And the Colts matchup is sneaky juicy. The Colts have been a wide receiver production funnel. They've allowed the third most fantasy points to wide receivers and the third most receiving yards per game. That's exactly how you get another ceiling game out of your quarterback. So I really like this. It's not just the passing as well. He's been kind of a touchdown cheat code, and also the rushing scores that he's been adding and the rushing just production in general has been something that we haven't seen this ceiling from him in quite some time. So the Jaguars are in real playoff contention, and they're kind of in the mix to lead this entire division. So they're definitely not playing soft at this point. They're still pushing and still trying to score as many points as possible. So I think that this guy who just hung a bunch of touchdowns over the last 2 weeks is going to be someone that if you are in a pinch, maybe you have an injury at quarterback, there's tons of injuries at quarterback across the league. If for some reason Trevor Lawrence is out there, he's the guy that you can trot right out into the fantasy championship week and feel really good about your upside. But if your fantasy season isn't going how you hoped, this may help. I've teamed up with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, to give you another way to make game day more interesting. Here's exactly how it works. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, passing yards, touchdowns, things like that. Then it's basically you calling how a player performs and seeing your picks come to life on every snap. And here's the part you should know. Right now, new DraftKings customers who play $5 or more get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly. So if you're new, you play $5 or more and they drop $50 in Pick 6 credits right into your account. All you need to do is download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use promo code HOLKA to unlock that offer. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. Let's talk about the running back position. Obviously, what has happened here in the backfield with Judkins in Cleveland is something we have to talk about. Cleveland's running back room basically has gotten flipped, right? So Raheem Sanders was the preferred back the rest of the way in Week 16. Cleveland's Week 16 game was a loss 23-20 to Buffalo, but the backfield still produced a ton of usable touches behind it. So Sanders is kind of the simple ad because he's already kind of gotten the work. And I think he's one of those guys that could be one of those people that you can just slot right in, get your 15 touches and move on. And I don't know if it's one that he can necessarily mess up at this point. So I think he's going to be one of those ones where Raheem Sanders is the first ad, and he's kind of that preferred back, at least their preferred back after Judkins went down. If you need a championship like running back ad that you can basically toss right into your flex and kind of this rare late season spot where the backfield can kind of change overnight, Sanders is the priority ad, and Cleveland's backfield is kind of the contingency bet that can save your starting roster if you need it. My guess is that if we're just looking at both of these guys, Raheem Sanders and Dylan Sampson, I would prefer to have the option of just getting Sanders because he's the one that jumped in right away, and the status is kind of uncertain for Sampson at this point. The passing game usage is definitely nice, though, that you get from him, but he did miss practice. There is still risk that he might miss Week 17. This one only matters if he's cleared. Michael Carter is a guy that should not be on your waivers. He's kind of the last man standing in Arizona. He's the clear starter right now. Definitely didn't show as much of the upside, but still did lead the backfield with 11 carries versus 6 for Corey Kinner and 5 for Demercado, meaning he's kind of going to get the first crack of touches in Week 17 as well. And the role is definitely real. This team has just been basically getting blown out, which is not ideal for the run game, but also if Carter can stay involved in the passing game. In Week 14, he ran 25 passing routes. That was more than Bam Knight. I think this is one of those situations where you want to have the pass-catching running back in this backfield. And the matchup is a legit cheat code for running backs. So the Bengals are one of our targets the entire year, and they've allowed the most fantasy points to opposing running backs, the most rushing yards. And if this repeats, it could be one of those situations where it's not a one-week thing, and we kind of get this Carter ceiling game at the perfect time, championship week. He's also one of those guys that if he is out there and you're set at running back, I would be grabbing him and blocking your opponent. One of those guys that you would hate to leave him out there if you have priority and then just get run over in the fantasy championship week. Real quick, this time of the year is a great time to be tracking incentives, milestones, contract bonuses, all of that stuff. And the good news is I've done all of that for you. BonusNFL.com. If you throw your email in here, you'll get a complete tracker, a complete list of 50 plus players that are still very close to hitting some of their contract bonuses. This can be great players to be betting overs on. These can be players that you definitely want to have in your fantasy lineups if you're still in the fantasy playoffs, all of those things. And you can get it for free. Just check out the link in the description or just go to bonusnfl.com. This is one of those ones that led us to a 20x multiplier on Underdog this past week. So a lot of fun kind of sweating these on Sunday as well. Hopefully you guys check it out. Chris Rodriguez, let's talk about this. So he missed week 15 with a groin injury, came back in week 16, immediately led the backfield with 15 carries. Krosky Merritt had just 8. So that's kind of that lead back with the switch that's going to flip right back on. So we like that. The workload's certainly real, even when Washington has been in poor game script, even when they've been losing games. So the week 14 was kind of rough for the whole offense, right? But he still logged 10 carries for 52 yards. The floor touches is really what you need here. The matchup, though, in week 17 is a nice get right spot. We get the Cowboys and their defense giving up the 7th most fantasy points to running back. So you're not really chasing a miracle here. You're just attacking like a real leak of this defense, and we'll see what happens at the quarterback position. But them leaning into the run game is something I could certainly see them doing. Dallas has kind of been one of those teams that's been just a lot of chaos, right? A lot of high scoring games. So the reality is Rodriguez, if he can come off of a nice 15 carry game here, you're going to feel really strong if you can still grab him on waivers or you had someone that was able to drop him. Blake Corum is interesting, right? He's available in 70.2% of leagues. He's kind of just been cashing in every single week. He's scored in each of the last 4 games. That's kind of a weekly touchdown path that you can actually start in title week if you're in a pinch. He's kind of a non-factor in the passing game, which is not ideal, but not necessarily just a handcuff either. It's basically been a 50-50 split at times with Kyren Williams, but also in the money areas of the field when you really need to be scoring touchdowns. There hasn't been really anyone that has stood out in this backfield. Corum still getting real weekly touches, and Atlanta can be beat on the ground. That much we know. So the exact combo that you would want for a championship week plug in. A lot of the guys that we're talking about here, at least some of them, will not be available. So this is one of those guys that if you are in a pinch, you can grab them, but also I'd be blocking. The standalone value is certainly there for him. Taysom Hill's interesting, right? He's available in 98% of leagues. Obviously, he gets through that long touchdown pass. He can be used as a tight end, but also in real life, he's kind of used like a running back at times. So week 16, he had 12 carries, 5 catches, and threw a passing touchdown. That's that cheat code usage that you can play from the tight end spot. He led the Saints in rushing attempts in week 16. That's literally that. I mean, it was crazy to see the offense run through him again. Wasn't really just kind of like a gadget cameo here. It was really just the game plan that they had. He was their number 1 backfield option, and I think his line could have been even bigger because a 20-yard receiving TD got called back on a holding penalty. So prime stuff for here from Taysom Hill, and just one of those guys that I would not want my opponent to have playing against me this week. If I was a favorite, even if I wasn't a favorite, this is a guy that can kind of have a nice ceiling for you at the tight end position, especially if there's not a lot of upside on their team already. This is a guy that you could grab and block as well. Parker Washington, he's available in 88.7% of leagues, kind of the hot hand for Lawrence in the slot. In week 16, he had 10 targets, 145 yards, and a touchdown. That kind of spike tells you that he can literally swing a championship week when the Jags are forced to lean on him. So in week 12, he had 7 targets, he had 71 yards and a touchdown in that game. So it's not the first time we've seen him spike. The matchup that we have here is absolutely built for a wide receiver 3 to pop. We talked about Trevor Lawrence. The Colts have been one of the most wide receiver friendly defenses, 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers, 3rd most receiving yards to wide receivers, and 10 wide receiver touchdowns allowed. This is the exact profile that you should be chasing on waivers going into fantasy championship week. I think we have proof that this is real. The volume, the offense, the upside since week 15 through 16, Jacksonville's put up 48 and 34 points. The offense is absolutely humming, and those secondary weapons can still get fed at this point. So I think that this is a guy that should absolutely not be on waivers after his big blow up week, but also just trying to attach ourselves to this offense in a really good matchup in week 17 is something that you want to try and actually grab guys that can win you your week or block guys that can really hurt you. He would definitely be in that category for me. Adonai Mitchell, he's available in 66% of leagues, so he's likely not out there by the fantasy championship round. 33 targets, though, over the last 4 weeks. So if you are just looking for some volume, obviously the Jets is not really a team we're looking for a ton of upside out of, but the volume still matters here, and he can still kind of be that downfield guy, even in kind of a check down offense, if that makes sense. So once again, led the Jets in air yards and targets last week. The offense is kind of like check down centric right now with quarterback Brady Cook, yet Mitchell still led the team in air yards. So the spike week proof is already on tape. Week 13, 100 yards and a touchdown. Week 15, 58 yards and a touchdown. So he's definitely volatile. But I do think that if you're going to be adding a guy for some ceiling in the fantasy championship, this offense is a little bit of a mess. But he's the kind of profile, team leading target share, air yards, and that's the exact type of player that can swing a title with one spike week. If Tyrod Taylor gets the week 17 start versus the Patriots, I do think that Mitchell would have a little bit more upside than he's had with Cook as well. So kind of some hidden upside there. Let's talk about Jalen Coker. So he's available in 96.6% of leagues. He's been Carolina's clear number 2 wide receiver finally. So they made him the number 2 wideout right next to Ted McMillan. That role upgrade is kind of the whole argument here on waivers. 5 targets, 34-yard sideline catch. That was really nice this past week. Obviously, the Panthers just beat the Bucs 23-20. They're kind of playing tight, scrappy games at this point, so where you can kind of get a couple of chunk plays from Jalen Coker. He gives you a nice little bit of ceiling that we've seen and touchdown ceiling as well. So I think the perception is that this is just kind of a random wide receiver for a team that doesn't want to throw a ton, but he keeps showing up in big moments, and kind of where the Panthers are at this point of the season, they've been pretty scrappy and they've been kind of producing in multiple ways here. So I think that he's one of those guys that people label him in like that wide receiver 5-6 category, but maybe deserves a little bit more just from the ceiling that he can give you. And if he's still on waivers as like a clear number 2 wide receiver, he's someone that can drop into your lineup if you're in a pinch, or just give you a little bit more depth, taking away a little bit more depth from your opponent, that sort of thing. Let's talk about Trey Tucker. So he's available in 68.5% of leagues. So still a good chunk. The Giants matchup is an absolute green light for me, though. The 3rd most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. This is one of the softest wide receiver matchups that you can draw in week 17. So this one's one that's definitely not safe, but he's certainly live. I'm just going back and looking through some of the box scores. Week 16, 4 catches on 5 targets or 43 yards. Not ideal. Did get a couple carries in that game, which is nice. But in week 12, 10 targets for 217 air yards. So that's the kind of role that could create like a one big play type of swing if you do need to kind of get a little bit more ceiling into your roster. So the perception flip here to me is that he's had multiple kind of spike week flashes this season. He had like a total 0 in week 15. So there's definitely that as well. But one of the players that you can kind of try and add that should still be available, that can give you kind of like high leverage, deep usage. Obviously, the air yards, we've seen that against a terrible secondary for the Giants. So I think that's one of those ones where you kind of trust the matchup and trust the usage, because it could kind of combine in a way that could lead you towards like one of those long scores. He's done it multiple times this season, and help you kind of flip that coin in your matchup if you need a little bit more upside. Definitely risky, but the Giants matchup is one of the cleanest ceiling swings that you'll find on waivers at this point of the season. That's it, guys. Appreciate you guys being with us all season long. This is going to be the last waiver video of the season. Best of luck in the fantasy championship, and let me know in the comments if you take it down.